Abandoned mother bear brings 6 cubs through the snow. What happens next is a true miracle. In the heart of a snow-covered wilderness, a mother bear, abandoned and alone, faces the most daunting challenge of her life, caring for her 6 vulnerable cubs in the harshest conditions imaginable. As winter's chill tightens its grip and every step becomes a struggle, this incredible mother refuses to give up. With each passing moment, their survival seems less certain. Yet an unexpected miracle unfolds. This is a story of hope, strength, and the unbreakable bond between a mother and her cubs, one that will leave you in awe of the sheer will to survive against all odds. Hi, welcome to Creature Clips. In today's video, we're going to dive into an incredible, heart-wrenching story of an abandoned mother bear who fought for the survival of her cubs. What she and her little ones went through will leave you speechless. Deep in the heart of a snow-covered wilderness, a mother bear faces the unimaginable. Abandoned by her pack, she is left to care for her 6 newborn cubs alone. The harsh winter conditions threaten their survival at every step. As temperatures plummet and snow piles up, this brave mother has only one instinct guiding her: the survival of her cubs. With each passing day, her strength is tested as she battles the unforgiving elements, struggling to keep her cubs alive in an environment where survival is a rare feat. The journey begins as the mother bear, with her 6 cubs trailing behind, ventures deeper into the snow-covered forest. The weight of responsibility weighs heavily on her shoulders. The cubs, small and fragile, have no chance of surviving without her guidance and protection. The first hurdle they face is the snow itself. Each step she takes through the deep drifts is exhausting, but for every step she takes, the cubs struggle to keep up. They are young and weak, not yet able to withstand the harshness of the world around them. The mother bear's resolve never wavers, though. She presses on, guiding her cubs through the snow, using every bit of her strength to move forward. As the storm intensifies, they face the constant threat of predators. A lone bear in the wild is vulnerable, but a mother bear with cubs is an even greater target. The mother bear's vigilance grows sharper as she scans the surroundings, always ready to protect her little ones from any danger that may lurk nearby. With each passing moment, the urgency of their situation becomes clearer. They cannot afford to stop. They cannot afford to rest. The cubs, now tired and struggling to keep up, are dependent on their mother more than ever. She pauses at every opportunity to nudge them forward, to encourage them with the tenderness only a mother could provide. The wilderness is cold, the wind harsh, but the bond between mother and cubs keeps them moving. The group finds shelter in a small cave, where they huddle together to escape the worst of the storm. Inside the cave, the mother bear keeps her cubs close, making sure they stay warm as she remains on alert, ever watchful. The storm rages outside, but for a brief moment, they are safe. The next day, as the storm begins to subside, the journey continues. Every step is harder than the last, but the mother's determination grows stronger with each passing day. This incredible story is one of pure love and determination. Against all odds, this mother bear continues to fight for her cubs' survival. Her resilience and unwavering devotion to her little ones remind us of the extraordinary strength that nature and motherhood can bring. The odds are stacked against them, but they press on. Their journey is far from over, but with each step, they are writing a story of survival that will leave you in awe of the incredible power of a mother's love. On a cold, unforgiving winter day, a lone mother bear, her coat matted with snow, trudged through the dense forest, surrounded by endless expanses of white. The chill in the air bit into her fur, and every breath she took left a visible puff in the freezing atmosphere. For a moment, the world seemed to stand still, frozen in time as the snowflakes fell, each one a tiny reminder of the harsh environment that was steadily closing in on her and her 6 tiny cubs. But she had no choice but to keep moving. The journey had already taken a toll on her body. The weight of the responsibility she carried, 6 small cubs, dependent entirely on her for survival, was nearly unbearable. She was a mother, and every instinct in her being told her to protect them, to do whatever was necessary to make sure they stayed alive, even in this unforgiving landscape. Her eyes scanned the barren trees, the towering pines and oaks now lost under a thick layer of snow, with nothing to offer but the unrelenting cold. The ground beneath her was uneven, and each step seemed to sink deeper into the snowdrifts. The wind howled, adding a chilling, ghostly soundtrack to the scene, making it feel even more isolating. She had never felt so alone. The cubs, still small and helpless, were barely able to keep up. Their legs, not yet strong enough for long journeys, struggled in the deep snow. They were weak from hunger and exhaustion, their tiny paws sinking into the snow, their movements slow and hesitant. Every few steps, 1 or 2 would stumble and fall behind, and the mother bear would stop to nudge them, encourage them with a low grunt, or nuzzle them gently with her nose. She never let them fall too far behind. She had to be their guide, their protector. At times, the wind would blow harder, and the snow would fall thicker, making it nearly impossible for the cubs to see where they were going. They would huddle close together, finding comfort in the warmth of their mother's fur, and she would walk steadily onward, her own exhaustion mounting with every step. The mother bear's movements were slow but deliberate. She paused frequently to rest, not because she wanted to, but because she needed to. She was not the same as she had been when she was with the rest of her pack. The pack, once a source of safety and strength, was now nowhere in sight. She had no idea where they had gone, or why they had abandoned her. All she knew was that it was just her and her cubs now, and if she wanted them to survive, she would have to push forward with everything she had left. In those moments of pause, she would look around, her sharp eyes scanning the environment for any sign of danger. Bears, even ones as strong as herself, were vulnerable in the wilderness, especially when alone. Though her instincts told her to keep moving, she couldn't afford to take risks. In the distance, she thought she heard a noise, a snap of a twig, or perhaps the soft rustle of a creature in the underbrush. Her muscles tensed. Her body was telling her to stay alert, always prepared for the worst. There was no time to rest for long. The cold would kill them faster than anything else if they stayed in one place for too long. It was a constant battle between exhaustion and instinct, but she couldn't allow herself to give in to the overwhelming fatigue. With every step, she reminded herself, "I have to keep going. I have to keep them safe." The wind was cruel, biting at her face and filling her ears with a constant, hissing sound that made it difficult to hear anything around her. But still, she pressed on. The snow was thick and deep, and it felt as if the world had shrunk to just this small, white space, where every step felt like a monumental effort. With each stride, she could feel the weight in her chest, her own heart pounding in her ears. The pace had slowed considerably, and the cubs were falling further behind. She stopped again, this time not just to rest but to gather the cubs close together. The smallest of them was visibly struggling, his fur matted and his little face streaked with exhaustion. The others seemed to sense his weakness and gathered around him, trying to keep him warm and protected. The mother bear lowered her head to nuzzle him gently, her soft grunts conveying the only reassurance she could offer. There was no time to waste, though. She couldn't afford to linger for too long. The cold would creep in too quickly, and they would freeze before they had a chance to find shelter. With a deep, guttural growl, she began to push them forward again, her movements filled with quiet urgency. Each cub, despite their small size and weak limbs, followed closely. It was a struggle. One by one, the cubs stumbled through the snow, some of them falling, only to be scooped up by their mother and nudged forward. There was no rest for any of them, not yet. The storm was too dangerous, and the clock was ticking. Every moment spent idling was another chance for something to go wrong. After what felt like hours, they finally reached a small clearing. The ground was slightly firmer here, the snow not as deep. The mother bear's senses were alert as she moved into the clearing, scanning the area for any sign of danger. Her eyes darted from side to side as she kept her cubs close, all of them huddling together for warmth in the small patch of snow. She knew they couldn't rest for long. The storm still raged on, and the sky above seemed to promise even more snow. Her own body was giving out, but the sight of her cubs gave her the strength she needed to continue. She couldn't fail them, not now, not after everything they had already been through. The cold began to feel unbearable, the snowstorm relentless. But in this moment of desperate survival, the bond between mother and cubs was the only thing that mattered. With her body exhausted, her steps slower, and her energy waning, she continued. She was their only hope now, and she would not stop. The days dragged on like an endless march through the snow, each one more grueling than the last. The once vibrant wilderness had been reduced to a monochrome blur of white, every landscape around the mother bear and her cubs a frozen void. She had not been prepared for this kind of journey. The pack, her strength and her guide, was gone, leaving her with nothing but her instincts and her overwhelming love for her cubs. The storm had intensified in the past 2 days, whipping through the trees with a relentless fury. The mother bear could feel the tension in the air as the snow grew deeper and the wind became more violent. Each step had become harder, and every day, it seemed like there was less hope. Her paws had been torn and bruised from the harsh terrain, the weight of the snow taking its toll on her muscles. Yet she pressed on. She had no choice. The cubs, meanwhile, were visibly weaker. Their small bodies were not designed for the brutal cold, and their energy was drained by the constant battle just to stay upright in the snow. The smallest cub, the runt of the litter, had been slowing them down, and his frailty was a constant worry for the mother bear. The other cubs were more agile, but they were all hungry, exhausted, and growing more vulnerable by the hour. The mother bear did what she could to encourage them, nudging them forward when they stumbled, urging them to keep going even when it felt impossible. Her instincts told her they needed to find shelter, a place to rest, somewhere safe from the storm. But the wilderness offered little in the way of comfort. There was no warmth, no refuge, just a vast expanse of snow and ice that seemed to stretch on forever. The trees around them stood tall and ominous, their branches weighed down by heavy snow, their dark silhouettes barely visible through the thick, swirling storm. It was then that something extraordinary happened. The mother bear, her body aching and her eyes desperate, suddenly stopped in her tracks. She sniffed the air, her nostrils flaring, searching for any sign of safety. Her heart raced as she caught a faint, almost imperceptible scent, a scent of shelter, of something different in the air. Her ears perked up, straining to listen through the howling wind. There, barely audible over the storm, was the sound she had been hoping for, the soft echo of wind blowing through an opening in the rock. She knew what it meant. A cave. Her instincts surged, and without hesitation, she led the cubs in the direction of the sound. The snow beneath her feet became more compacted as they neared the rocky outcrop, and with each step, a glimmer of hope began to rise. The cubs, tired and weak, struggled to keep up, but the mother bear urged them forward. She was exhausted, but she had one final burst of strength left. She needed to get them to safety, and she could feel they were close. The wind howled as they neared the entrance to the cave, but she didn't stop. She forced her weary legs to move faster, her cubs following her, now desperately clinging to the last remnants of their strength. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, they reached the opening. The entrance to the cave was small, almost hidden by a pile of snow and ice that had gathered at the base of the rock. The mother bear, using her powerful forearms, dug at the snow, pushing it aside to make a path. The cubs, though exhausted, instinctively followed her, moving into the relative warmth of the cave as soon as the opening was clear. Inside, the temperature was slightly warmer. The thick stone walls offered some shelter from the biting wind outside, and the snow that had accumulated inside the cave was softer and less chilling than the freezing air. The cubs huddled together, instinctively curling up for warmth, their little bodies trembling. The mother bear, though still weary, felt a rush of relief as she turned to look at her cubs. They were safe, at least for now. She nudged each of them gently, checking to make sure they were all okay. The cubs, their eyes wide with fatigue, seemed to realize for the first time in days that they were no longer being battered by the storm. They looked up at their mother with a quiet gratitude, some of them curling closer to her, seeking comfort and warmth. For the first time in days, there was a glimmer of peace, a moment of respite in the middle of their ordeal. The mother bear settled herself against the cave wall, curling her massive body around her cubs. She lowered her head and closed her eyes, still listening for the howling wind outside. But she knew that for now, they were safe. Her breathing was shallow, her body exhausted from the days of travel and the stress of keeping her cubs alive. But she was determined not to sleep too deeply. The storm could return at any moment, and she needed to stay alert. The cubs, however, were exhausted. Their tiny bodies, so fragile after days of struggle, began to settle. One by one, they drifted off to sleep, their soft breaths the only sound in the cave. The mother bear remained awake, her eyes flicking from one cub to the next, making sure they were all safe. She had done everything she could to protect them, and now, for the first time since the journey began, they had a chance to rest. In the silence of the cave, with the storm still raging outside, a miracle had occurred. The mother bear had found shelter when it seemed impossible. She had kept her cubs alive through the worst conditions imaginable. She had defied the odds, and in doing so had given them a chance at survival. This cave, this small refuge, would be their haven for as long as the storm lasted. It was a miracle, a moment of peace in the midst of chaos, a temporary escape from the relentless wilderness that had sought to tear them apart. As the hours passed, the storm continued to howl outside, but the mother bear remained vigilant, her eyes scanning the cave's entrance, her ears listening for any sign of danger. But for now, in this one small moment, they were safe. The miracle was not just the cave, not just the shelter from the storm, but the strength of the bond between mother and cubs, the unbreakable force that drove the mother bear to do whatever it took to protect them. In the days that followed, the cave would provide them with the shelter they desperately needed, a brief respite from the relentless storm. The cubs would grow stronger, and the mother bear would find the energy to keep moving, to continue their journey through the wilderness. But this moment, this first miracle, was the turning point. It was the first glimmer of hope in what had seemed like an endless struggle for survival. And it was a reminder that, sometimes, in the midst of despair, miracles do happen. As dawn's first light broke through the overcast sky, the mother bear stirred in the dark, damp cave. The storm outside, which had raged for days, had begun to quiet, leaving in its wake an eerie stillness. The wind, once howling with fury, was now a soft whisper, and the relentless snowstorm that had nearly wiped them out seemed to have faded, at least for now. The temperature inside the cave was a little more bearable than it had been during the coldest part of the storm, and the warmth of her body, pressed close against her cubs, had kept them all alive through the brutal nights. The fire of survival still burned within her, and she knew they had made it through the worst. But deep inside, she understood the fragile nature of this moment. Survival was never a guarantee, and her journey was far from over. The mother bear raised her head slowly, listening for any sounds outside the cave. The storm had left the landscape in chaos, the once familiar world now covered in a thick blanket of snow that had reshaped everything around them. Her ears twitched at every sound. The distant call of a bird, the crack of snow settling in the trees, the faint stirring of her cubs, who were still huddled closely together. The warmth of the cave had offered them rest, but the mother bear knew they could not stay there forever. The wilderness was harsh, and their survival depended on the choices she made in the coming hours. As her instincts took over, she turned to look at her cubs. Their tiny bodies were still curled together for warmth, their breath rising in visible puffs in the cold air. For the first time in days, their faces seemed less drawn with hunger, and their eyes, though still tired, looked less desperate. They were exhausted, but they were alive. She nudged the smallest one first, the runt of the litter, with a soft grunt. He stirred, his eyelids fluttering open as he blinked up at her. It was an overwhelming feeling, this sense of relief, of knowing they had survived something so dire, something she hadn't been sure they would make it through. She licked the cub's face gently, removing any remnants of snow that clung to his fur. As the cub yawned and stretched, she moved on to the others, rousing them one by one. They were all weaker than she had hoped. Their small bodies had been tested beyond measure in the last few days. The smallest cub had been the most fragile, struggling with every step in the snow, shivering uncontrollably as his siblings tried to keep up with the pace. The mother had feared for him, unsure if he would make it through the cold, unsure if his tiny form could endure the harsh winter conditions. But now, as she watched him rise to his feet, her heart filled with pride. He was a survivor. Her cubs, all of them, were survivors. The cave was their refuge for the time being. Outside, the world was still covered in snow. The trees weighed down with frost, and the remnants of the storm hung heavily in the air. But it was quieter, and there was no longer the pressing fear of the storm's fury. The winds had died down, and for the first time in days, the mother bear felt the weight on her shoulders lighten, even if just for a moment. The storm had stolen so much from them: energy, warmth, the very certainty of their survival. Yet now, the worst was behind them. It was only then that the mother bear realized just how exhausted she was. The strain of the journey, the constant battle to keep her cubs alive, had drained her. Her body felt like a distant shell, tired, sore, and worn from the constant fight against the cold. But despite the pain that throbbed in her limbs, despite the hollow feeling of weariness in her chest, she felt something new: hope. The storm had broken, and they had survived. That was something to hold on to, something to keep her moving forward. The mother bear settled into a sitting position, her broad back against the cool stone of the cave. Her eyes remained alert, scanning the entrance for any sign of danger, but her mind wandered, reflecting on what had happened in the last few days. When they had first set out on this journey, it had been for one reason: survival. The pack had abandoned them, leaving her to face the wilderness alone with her cubs. They had lost their family, their safety net, but they had found something else: resilience. In the face of overwhelming adversity, they had not given up. For a brief moment, the mother bear allowed herself to rest. Her chest rose and fell with each breath, slow and steady. The cubs, tired but content for the moment, lay near her, their small bodies pressed against hers for warmth. The smallest one, the runt, had curled up close to her, his soft fur brushing against her side. She looked down at him, a protective tenderness filling her heart. They had made it. They had made it through the storm, through the darkest and coldest days of their lives. But the mother bear knew better than to think the danger was gone. The wilderness would not show mercy just because they had found a small shelter. There would be more challenges ahead. Food would be scarce, and the cold would still be biting. Yet she knew that they could do it. She would guide them. She would fight for them, just as she always had. The next morning, when the sun finally broke through the thick clouds, the air felt different. It was still cold, still harsh, but it was not the oppressive freeze of the storm. The world outside the cave had been transformed, the snow now glittering under the pale light of the sun, casting a soft glow across the barren landscape. It was a new day. The cubs had slept soundly through the night, their bodies still weak from their ordeal, but they were starting to stir, slowly waking up as the warmth of the sun crept into the cave. The mother bear stood, stretching her sore limbs, and moved toward the entrance of the cave. Her paws, raw from days of trekking through deep snow, left prints in the dusting of snow that had settled outside. The storm had cleared, but the challenges had not ended. Their journey was far from over. There were miles ahead of them, new trials, new dangers to face. But now, the mother bear had hope. She had the strength to push forward. Her cubs had been tested, but they had survived. The storm had threatened to break them, but they had emerged from it, still whole. The wilderness had thrown everything it had at them, but they were still standing. It was nothing short of a miracle. With a deep breath, the mother bear turned back to her cubs. They were ready. They had no choice but to continue on, but they would do so together. The bond between them was unshakable. It was what had kept them alive, what would continue to guide them through the rest of their journey. The mother bear knew she couldn't stop for long. There was no time to waste. She nudged her cubs, encouraging them to rise, to get moving. Slowly, with their tiny legs unsteady beneath them, they followed her, one by one. Each step was a victory, each moment a testament to their strength. The wilderness had been cruel, and their journey had been harder than she could have ever imagined. But the storm had passed, and in its wake, something stronger had emerged: the will to survive, the love of a mother, and the resilience of her cubs. Their journey wasn't over, but they were ready for whatever lay ahead. The first miracle was behind them, but many more would come, and the mother bear would face them all, with her cubs by her side, as they continued the fight for survival in the unforgiving wilderness. As we continue to follow the powerful journey of this mother bear and her cubs, it's hard not to wonder about the incredible strength and resilience that nature so often shows us. Nature is full of miracles, moments that remind us of the raw beauty, brutality, and awe-inspiring power of the wild. It's a force that shapes not just the creatures that inhabit this planet, but also the lives of people like you and me, who are captivated by these untold stories. Do you believe in the power of nature's miracles? Do you think there are moments in nature that go beyond the ordinary? Moments that make us stop in our tracks and reflect on the deeper meaning of survival, perseverance, and hope. It's easy to look at the survival stories of animals like this mother bear and her cubs and think that it's all about instinct. But is there something more at play? Could these animals feel hope, determination, and love in the same way we do? Take a moment to reflect on the bond between the mother bear and her cubs. Imagine the heavy weight on her shoulders, the responsibility of caring for 6 tiny lives, fighting for them in the most unforgiving conditions. Each step she took through the snow, each moment she spent shielding her cubs from the storm, was driven by something more than mere survival. It was driven by love. It's a reminder that sometimes it's the emotional connection between a parent and their offspring that fuels the strength to keep going. So, let me ask you, have you ever felt that kind of love? The kind that pushes you past your limits? Where does the power of love end and the power of nature begin? In the wild, it's survival of the fittest. Yet, what we often overlook is how these animals, like this mother bear, demonstrate incredible emotional intelligence. She wasn't just fighting the storm and the harsh elements, she was fighting to keep her cubs alive, protecting them from the cold, from hunger, and from the many dangers that lurked in the wilderness. At every turn, she made decisions based on the well-being of her family. Isn't it fascinating that in the animal kingdom, love and survival are so tightly intertwined? Now, think back to the moment when the storm cleared. The mother bear and her cubs had weathered the worst of it. And although the journey ahead would be just as perilous, this moment marked a miraculous victory. For every obstacle they had overcome, for every struggle they had endured, the bond between them had only strengthened. How many of us have faced hardships in our lives, whether small or large, and found ourselves thinking that there's no way out, no way to overcome it? But just like the bear family, we too are capable of surviving the storm, of emerging from the darkness stronger than before. It's not just about the physical strength we have. It's about the resilience of the heart and spirit. Now, we want to hear from you. How do you think this mother bear found the strength to survive such a harsh and unforgiving environment? Is it possible that animals, just like us, have moments of introspection or even feel emotions as deeply as we do? Could it be that there's more to their survival instinct than mere biology? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Your opinions matter to us, and we'd love to hear your perspectives on how animals, nature, and love intersect in stories like these. Maybe you've witnessed similar acts of heroism or survival in the animal kingdom, or perhaps you have a personal story that resonates with the struggles of this mother bear. Whether it's a moment of overcoming adversity, a time when you showed strength in the face of a challenge, or even a time when love and perseverance helped you push through, your story might just inspire someone else. Sharing these experiences creates a community where we can all learn from each other's resilience. While we dive deep into these powerful wildlife stories, it's also important to pause and reflect on our connection to the world around us. Nature isn't just something that exists apart from us. It's an integral part of our own lives, whether we live in the heart of a bustling city or in the serene countryside. Every living being has a role to play in the vast, interconnected web of life. And just like the mother bear's journey, there's much we can learn from the raw strength of nature. If this incredible story of survival moved you, if you found yourself rooting for the little cubs to make it through the storm, don't forget to hit that like button. It's a small action, but it helps support content that brings these miraculous stories to light. By liking the video, you're not only showing appreciation for the story, but also helping to share these important moments with others. It's a way for you to contribute to telling more stories like this, and raise awareness about the wonders of wildlife and the miraculous strength of nature. And while you're here, don't forget to subscribe to your channel name. We've got so many more incredible wildlife stories to share, each one offering a unique perspective on survival, love, and the perseverance of animals in the wild. If you enjoyed this video and want to keep hearing about more animals who defy the odds and face challenges head-on, subscribing is the best way to stay updated on all our future content. Have you subscribed yet? If not, click that subscribe button and make sure to turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single story. We can't wait to share more of these heart-wrenching, awe-inspiring moments with you. Our journey together is just beginning. But before you go, we want to hear more from you in the comments. We know that there are so many opinions, ideas, and thoughts out there that are just as powerful as the story we've shared today. How do you think this bear family's story is a reflection of our own lives? Do you believe in the miracles of nature, or do you think it's all just instinct and survival? Is there a moment in your life when you faced an obstacle that seemed insurmountable, but with love, support, or sheer will, you managed to overcome it? We'd love for you to share that with us. Whether it's in the wild, the world of animals, or our own experiences as humans, survival stories have a way of resonating with everyone. They remind us that, no matter how tough things get, there's always hope, there's always love, and there's always a way forward. So, let us know what you think. We appreciate each and every one of you who has tuned in to witness this miraculous journey, and we can't wait to hear more of your thoughts and reflections. Together, we create a community built on the shared appreciation of the amazing strength of animals and the power of nature. And who knows, maybe, like this mother bear and her cubs, we all have our own miracles waiting for us if we keep moving forward, step by step, no matter the obstacles. This amazing tale of resilience is proof that, even in the toughest of conditions, survival is possible. The bond between mother and cub is stronger than we could ever imagine. Let us know your thoughts on this remarkable story. And, if you want to see more heartwarming animal tales, make sure to subscribe and check out the next video right here. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to follow us on social media links, and we'll see you in the next adventure.